Today's story is Anomaly Part 7, Journey's End, Finale, by RandoCalrissian. The forest shook violently. The noise emanating from it was so loud that it caused Maria's ears to bleed. "Arthur!" Rachel panicked. "We have to get her away from here. The exposure to this noise could kill her." Arthur stared at the young girl. She was holding her ears and screaming, begging to make the noise stop. "No," Arthur said calmly. "What do you mean, no?" she yelled. "She's just a child, Arthur. Can't you just let go of your bitterness and hatred for 1 second and help her?" Arthur just simply stared at Rachel. "If you care about her so much, then you move her," he said, raising his chin ever so slightly. Just then, the chaos in the forest stopped. It was still and calm. The only sounds that could be heard was their own breaths. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Rachel said, grabbing him by the shoulder and gritting her teeth. "Get a fire going," Arthur said, pushing her hand off of him. "It's going to get cold tonight." Night fell on them like a thick blanket. The only thing to illuminate them was the light of their fire. Rachel took first watch. Maria sat on a log close to the fire trying to warm herself up. She looked up and saw Arthur staring at her. He was like a lion stalking his prey. No breathing, no moving, just a cold black stare. "I know what you're waiting on," Maria said with a slight shake in her voice. "And what's that?" he asked. His expression was dead. His tone was lifeless. Fear spread throughout Maria's body with each passing second. "You're waiting for me to indulge, to gorge myself, so that you can prove to yourself that I'm the monster you suspect me to be," she said, trying to act brave. "I don't need to prove anything to myself," he said, slightly leaning forward. "I saw your mother on the ground, dead, drained of blood. You killed her because you were hungry. You've already gorged yourself. You've already had your fill. You're a monster, young lady, whether you like it or not," he proclaimed, breathing heavily. "You think I killed her willingly?" she asked, with sorrow in her voice. "I couldn't be farther from the truth. My mother was the one who saved me. She was the one who kept me from getting turned," Maria said. A single tear started to slide down her face. "She knew what I was becoming. She could see me deteriorate day by day, so every day she would give me a little bit of her blood to keep people from talking, from noticing. When I was at the base, I'd become more hungry than I had ever been. My mother knew that just a little bit of blood would not sustain me, so she gave me all of it," she said, as a thick red liquid ran down her face. "Her final words to me were, 'I would rather be dead than live in this world without you.' So, you see, I did not kill her to gorge myself or to satisfy my own gluttony. I killed her because she wanted me to live." Maria cuffed her hands over her eyes. The red liquid that Arthur now knew was blood poured down her face. Arthur softly stared at her. You could see her humanity still fighting to remain at the surface. Just then, Rachel walked back to where they were sitting. "So, when do you plan to move inside the Blood Forest?" she asked, sitting down on a log. "I don't," Arthur replied, looking down and slightly raising one eyebrow. I beg your pardon?" Rachel asked abruptly. Arthur just simply smiled. "Rachel," he said softly, "when will you learn that I am always 10 steps ahead?" he said, looking back up at her. Rachel's eyes widened with fear. She cleared her throat. "I don't know what you mean." He waved a kill gesture over his throat. "I'll cut the shit, Rachel," he said abruptly. "You've been in on this since the beginning." Again, Rachel cleared her throat. "What are you accusing me of, Arthur?" she asked. Arthur began to laugh. "Are you going to continue to play dumb and have me go over your incredibly stupid, evil plan? Or are you just going to come clean and end it right here and right now?" After he asked this, Rachel was silent. "So be it," he said. "You and the Queen have been working together. You brought her to Crescent Moon to provide her with a host to create a hybrid. Not only that, but the night after the battle in Crescent Moon when we spoke, he said with a smirk on his lips, you had a syringe filled with the Queen's venom on you, and when we hugged, you jammed that syringe in my back, the venom causing me to hallucinate and ultimately pass out, he said, still smirking. From there, the Queen was able to infect me with her pheromone, the pheromone that allows her to manipulate reality, trying to make me believe that I was bitten several times. Then, you found the creature indigenous to this planet, the Phoenicians, a dying and doomed race. You had them feed me the sob story on how they were once a noble and feared race, and how the spore reduced them to little more than rodents. And now they want me to kill it. Of course, knowing all this, I promised to burn down the blood forest, he said. Again, Arthur began to laugh. But of course, you can't burn down the blood forest. I know this because I've already tried, he said quietly. If you knew all this then, why even come here? Rachel said, standing up and putting herself in a guard position, ready for anything. You know, Arthur said, caressing his chin. I don't know what to be more disappointed about. That you betrayed me, or at least tried to, or the fact that you think that I didn't know any of this, he said, looking up at her. That's not answering my question, jackass, she said, pulling a knife out of her belt. The answer to your question is for two reasons. One, it was always important for you to believe that you had the upper hand. And two, she led me right to them, he said, smirking. Rachel dropped her hands to her side and tilted her head ever so slightly. She stared at him with a confused expression. Led you to them? What in God's name are you talking about? She asked. Wow, Rachel. You really didn't think this through, did you? He asked, chuckling. Think about it. Have you ever known me to stop and camp out anywhere? Even when we've been walking for an excessive amount of days? He said, standing up and staring at her. After all, she's one of them now. It's in her nature to go to her queen. Oh my God. We're in their nest, she said, slightly backing up with fear in her voice. That's correct, he said with a sigh. You know what? I think I've decided what I'm more disappointed in, and it's that you tried to betray me, he said, as he started to pace around her. Because you didn't do it to kill me, because you know you can't, nor did you do it to gain the upper hand in some sort of conflict, because you and I were not enemies. No, you did it for one reason and one reason only, to find out my identity, he said with a look of utter disappointment. Can you blame me? She said with a slight chuckle. All I've heard from you my entire life is lies. I just wanted to hear one goddamn truth, she said, at the top of her lungs and pointing her finger down to the ground. Arthur put his hand on his hips and looked down. He softly said, You don't understand. I don't think you've ever understood. Rachel scoffed. Oh, that you hate who you are? That you can't bear to tell me because it will bring back painful memories? Rachel asked in a mocking tone. As I said, you don't understand. I wanted to keep my line from ending the same way that it began, he said, with a single tear starting to run down his face. Oh, give me a break, Rachel said. What could you possibly be trying to prevent? Put the pieces together, Rachel, he snapped. The boy that offered too little, the boy that grew jealous, so jealous he took his first life, the boy that lied to his father, the boy that hides his mark. Rachel's eyes widened. She began to slowly back up as a single tear ran down her face. Oh my God, she said, softly cuffing her hands over her mouth. I know who you are. I know who you are, she said, beginning to cry. Now, you finally understand why I never told you, why I've been constantly running from the man I once was, he said firmly. My line, my legacy began with betrayal, and now because of what you have done, it will end with it as well, he said, turning away from her. Father, Oh, how pathetic, a voice yelled, cutting her off. The queen emerged from the trees. Her face was severely scarred. One of her eyes were missing. She snarled at Arthur as she walked behind Rachel. However, I must say that I am impressed. I'm sure you are, Arthur chuckled. If you truly believe I didn't know that queen vampires existed or that the Phoenicians we saw in the cave were all that's left on this planet, then you're much more stupid than I ever gave you credit for. And believe me, that's saying something. After he said this, the queen began to chuckle. Yes, bravo, you were able to fool me. That means you also probably know there's no such thing as an alpha dragon. After all, there can only be one dragon at a time, Queen said, which also means there's no way of killing me. And as you constantly remind everyone, there's no way of killing you. And your point? Arthur replied, sounding agitated. My point is there's no sense in fighting. A battle neither of us can win, she said with a mocking tone in her voice. So give me the girl and be done with all this. Arthur began to laugh. Oh my god, neither of you seem to get it, do you? He said, throwing his head back in the air. As I've said before, 10 steps ahead, he said with a smirk. What did you do, Arthur? Rachel asked with fear in her voice. Tell me, Rachel, what's the easiest way to cure a venomous snakebite? He asked, softly laughing. You make an anti-venom, she replied. Precisely, Arthur said. The queen then repeated Rachel's question. What did you do? Arthur held out his hand and opened his palm to reveal the vial of vampire venom he had originally given her when he first met her. You take away my world, I take away yours, he said with a cold expression on his face. Just then, both the queen and Rachel found out why Maria had been so quiet. They both looked up to see Maria convulsing and spazzing and turning back into the human she once was. No! The queen yelled as she stabbed one of her wings through Rachel's chest. She threw Rachel to the ground, then ran up to Arthur and stabbed him with her claws and wings. She pinned him to the ground. It's true, I can't kill you, but now I will take everything from you, and I will make you watch. Arthur just simply laughed, and with every shallow breath he said, 10 steps ahead. The queen's eyes widened. She looked up and saw Maria charging toward her with her claws aimed toward her heart. In one swift motion, Maria tore out the queen's heart and ended her. After she did this, all of the vampires gathered around Maria and bowed to her. Why are they doing that? She asked, looking at them all around her. Only a vampire can kill a queen, and now, you are their queen, he said. He walked over to Rachel's cold corpse. Maria looked down at her hands in both disgust and amazement. How did you do it? She asked, her hands shaking. Simple, Arthur said. After the battle with the spore, I pulled Menoch aside and gave him the vial. He mixed it with the sterile blood that he gave you, he said, kneeling down to touch Rachel's forehead. After that, it was simply a waiting game. And you told her it was an anti-venom? She said, looking back down at her hands. Because you knew she would believe you. Precisely, he said, picking up Rachel in his arms. Well, come on, let's finish the job. Let's burn this forest down, she said, raising her fist up in the air. Arthur, with Rachel in his arms, walked toward her and said, It's impossible. The forest is too thick. I know this because 238 years ago, Menoch and I tried, as a last attempt to save his people, and we failed, he said with a single tear running down his face. It was the same night Rachel's mother died. Burning the forest only released the spore into the air. She was infected. That was the night whatever shred of humanity was left in me died, he said as he continued to walk away from Maria. Being your daughter, it gave her an unnaturally long life, didn't it? She said as he walked further and further away. One that ended with nothing but heartache and betrayal, he said. I'm gonna take her now back to Earth, to the grave that was once stained with the blood of my brother. It will now flow with the blood of my daughter. Arthur, as long as I am queen of the vampires, we will never step foot on Earth again. You have my word, she said. He stopped. He turned around to look at her and replied, well, see that you keep it. Earth, 238 years later. Arthur stood over a small patch of grass, surrounded by an old and dead garden. How the hell did you find me? He asked as he stared at the ground. A voice resonated from behind him. Well, you didn't necessarily make it easy, the voice said with a slight chuckle. It wasn't supposed to be. So I'll ask you again, how the hell did you find me? He asked, looking up. I scoured the entire Earth for 3.5 years. Luckily, for me, only 1 day has passed on my planet, the voice proclaimed. What the hell do you want, Maria? He said, turning around to face her. I need your help, Arthur, she replied, sounding desperate. The Wendigo. It's brought my people to the brink of extinction. We can no longer fight. We no longer have the manpower to, she said, walking closer to him. Please, you're the only one who can stop them. Arthur lowered his head and began to laugh. Your people, he said mockingly. You're a hybrid, freak of nature. You have no people, he said, getting in her face. An honor. May I remind you that you so graciously bestowed upon me, she hissed. Regardless of what you think of me, what we think of each other, you're the only one that can help us. Those Wendigos, they walk like us, but they're vicious, mindless monsters, she said with fear in her voice. Please, Arthur. Please. Fine, he said, sounding annoyed, but only because I have nothing else to do and nothing else to lose, he said. That'll do, she said in annoyance. But before I go, answer me this one question. You and I, we're both anomalies, both freaks of nature, not belonging to anything or anyone. But do you miss it? That sense of belonging? Do you crave to be part of something again? He said, staring her in the eyes. The only thing I crave is to save the vampires from extinction, she responded harshly. Arthur began to laugh. Oh, Maria. Although you're almost 300 years old, you'll always be that naive little girl I found on Crescent Moon. All beings crave what they do not have. Don't pretend you're different, and don't forget that. Hello, friends. I hope you enjoyed this part of the series, the finale. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to let David, aka RandoCalrissian, do the talking for me. So, take it away, man.
Everyone, my name's David, but you probably know me better as RandoCalrissian. I'd like to thank everyone for going on this amazing journey with me, and as the Raven Dreams. He honestly did such an incredible job narrating the story and brought these characters to life in ways I never thought was possible. So thank you so much to him, and thank you to all of you. It really means so much to me. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it, and I cannot wait to see you all in the sequel series, Sunspot. One more thing before I go. If you know your history, you probably already know who the main character is, although I'd still like to see people theorize on who they think he might be in the comments down below. Thank you all so much. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to As the Raven Dreams. As always, God bless, and may the Force be with you.